morning. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, and welcome. My name is Bujani Sehoa. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, the co-founder of Levels app, and today I am your Meet the Mentor host. We're coming to you with an incredible, top business leader and actuary, Gcina Betela, who's done incredible work over the years, developing himself and really making a mark in the actuarial profession and giving back, spending time with people like you and I and telling us how he did it, how you can do it, and how it starts with you. The format of today's session will be, he'll take us through his journey, and throughout the session, anyone can just write a question in the chat section, and you can table your questions directly to Gcina. It's a unique opportunity to interact with someone that you may never have met, may never have known, who's right at the top at the echelons of financial services and business, and someone who's here today for you and with you to tell you that it starts with you. Okay, welcome, Gcina.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, Bujani, to share a bit of my story.
Stunning. And how are you on this warm winter morning?
No, I'm good. Busy week, but really good and looking forward to the chat.
Okay, all right, great. So we all know that you are multi-award nominated and winning actuary and CEO, but with all of these professional accolades and all of these incredible milestones and achievements in one's life, there's always a genesis. There's always a place where everything began, and we would like to know what made you decide to be an actuary and and there aren't many actuaries in South Africa. So tell us about, as a man in Eastern Cape, what made you decide to be an actuary, and how did you come to find out about the profession?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the Eastern Cape. Home is in a place called Mthatha. Both my parents were educators. So my mother was a high school principal for many years. And so I think growing up, academics has always been quite important to me. My mother actually taught maths for many years. It was one of her favorite subjects as well. But in terms of how I actually became an actuary, how I chose my career, I think it was really part of my high school journey, where I was like quite an academic child, as I mentioned about with my upbringing. And at the time, I used to always think that I'd end up being an accountant, interestingly enough, because I was very good at accounting. It was a subject that I found actually came quite naturally to me. But towards like the sort of grade 11 and grade 12 years, I sort of started, not doing as well as I wanted to do in terms of maths. And then I decided to give up a lot of time into that subject to actually improve my results and improve my marks. So over holidays, I'd spend time, taking extra lessons and putting in a lot of effort just to get really good marks so I could get good university entrance. And during that process, I was very good friends with one of our top students who was like very, very good at maths. So he would help me at school with it. And he had already planned and sort of had applied for a bursary to go study actual science at Gcina. And he used to tell me about it and how a great career it is in terms of financial services. And I think because growing up as a child, I'd always known that, I'd always be in financial services. I think my mother had always had this idea that I'd end up being in the medical field and being a doctor. But it just wasn't for me. I think I was always one of those people that saw myself wearing a suit every day and going into an office. And really, that's where making my mark would be. Growing up, I had the opportunity to do, I don't know if they still have it, that JSC's Schools Challenge, where you'd form a team of students and you'd go and like pick stocks. And from that, I started reading like the Sunday Times, reading the financial section. Didn't really understand a lot of it then, but I found that very interesting. And I always knew that financial services is where I would end up. So early on in my high school career, I always knew I always thought I'd become an accountant. But towards the end of it, I really found a love of maths. And through, my relationship with the top scholar at school, he sort of, inspired me to actually try doing actual science, because it's quite a different discipline and course. And I felt it would really give me an edge in my career. over, let's say, doing, let's say, something in economics, something in traditional finance. So that's really where my journey started. So I applied for it. I think when I applied to varsity, I applied for actual science, accounting, and engineering. It's almost like my third sort of option, and I got accepted, and that's the journey that I took. I mean, I think for me, what always fascinated and interested me is just the use of mathematics to solve, I think, very complicated problems.
Okay, okay. So you say you applied to UCT and you applied for, you had 3 options, and it was really about, you know, getting the right exposure to the right qualifications and to have people who are in your midst who are actually studying towards that profession. So you knew about the actuarial science or the actuary qualification because there was someone who was an actuary within your immediate community and social circle. And that's really what it boiled down to for you.
Yes, it did. So I studied at WITS, interestingly enough, but I had applied to both UCT and WITS. And I'd always thought I'd end up at UCT between the 2 universities. But when I got my, you know, when they give you a feedback in terms of, you know, what you've actually been accepted for, UCT has this Bachelor of Business Science program, which allows you to do the actual science degree basically over 4 years. And it includes the honors year as well. And WITS had a program where you could do a Bachelor of Science and then do a 3-year degree, which is a Bachelor of Science, and then afterwards opt to do an honors degree if you wanted to. So when I got my results back, UCT actually wanted me to also do a foundation year because their entrance criteria was a lot stricter. So it meant being in varsity for 5 years before actually graduating. And at the time, my mother was the single person who was actually looking after my studies. So having to choose between doing 5 years of varsity and then going to work and doing a 3-year degree at WITS, it sort of felt to me like the right decision to make. I'd rather just do 3 years at WITS. And so that's why I ended up choosing WITS. And it actually, gratefully, it actually worked out because WITS and UCT at the time were probably the best universities offering actual science. I think now you've got Stellenbosch and Pretoria and a couple of other great options. But in my time, those are the 2 premier places you would have wanted to study actual science.
Okay, okay. So from our side on Levels app, what we've done is we've actually managed to aggregate all the information for all the universities that offer actuarial science, and we'll be putting up links for you to, you know, find places to study, so where you can study actuarial science and which institutions offer them. If you can just refer to the chat, you'll see that that's exactly where you can get that information from. So we're bringing the information to you. We know that there aren't a lot of actuaries in South Africa by virtue of many different things. You know, the admission point score and the entry requirements to the qualification are quite intense and they're very high, but also just exposure, you know, and I think that's where we as Levels app have really tried to bring the information to the secondary school learners and to people in university, etc., to make sure that they get access to that information. Now, you guys will also note that Gcina mentioned that there are different names for each of the qualifications at each of the institutions. So UCT has a Bachelor of Business Science, you know, WITS has a Bachelor of Science, and the actuarial science qualification actually cuts across 2 faculties. So you can do actuarial science via the commerce route or via the science route. And the 2 have different entry requirements depending on the different universities. So that's just something to be mindful of. So be sure to apply for both streams at each of the institutions, and look out in our group chat to find out where you can study actuarial science. So yes. So now you are back to Gcina. So you're at WITS University, your first couple of years experience far away from home, you know, and you've met this, you know, you're in the melting pot of culture, of life, of business, of South Africa, you know, our most iconic city. I'm from Gauteng, and I'm from Johannesburg, so I will say that I have a bias. But tell us about those early years, your early experience in university, how you started to build social capital, because that's a huge part of being successful, you know, aligning yourself with like-minded people, connecting with the people that resonate with you and who you can connect with the most, and the people that will ultimately support you on your journey to becoming someone like the CFO of Absa Financial Services. Tell us.
So thanks, Virginia. I think, I think for me, I mean, I came from the Eastern Cape. I'd never been to Johannesburg before I came to study. So grew up in Mthatha, but my high school I spent at a boys' school in Queenstown. And fortunately enough, I think for my high school years, I spent most of it at boarding school. So I was in boarding school for those years. And I think it actually helped with the adjustment to coming to varsity and getting into res and assimilating, because I was really used to being away from home and used to almost disciplining myself in terms of my studies. So I think when you do actually come to here, it is a bit of a culture shock. I think getting to varsity and realizing that all of the great structures you had, I think in terms of, your focus and discipline are not quite there. So at home, you've got your parents to drive you and push you. You've got your teachers who are also supporting you. And you've also got, when I was in boarding school, we had set times to study. So you always knew that, okay, at this time in the evening, you're supposed to be dedicating time to your studies. When you get to varsity, I think the biggest realization is that your future career and your success is really dependent on yourself. And it's very important to have a very clear understanding and focus of why you're there. And also having chosen something that you're really interested in and enjoy. So it makes it easier to, put in the heavy hours and put in the time that you need to actually see you through varsity. So I think for me, that was probably the biggest adjustment. I think when you get to varsity, there's just this wonderful world and so many things that are happening, all this independence. And, if you're not careful, it can very easily run away with you. But I think for me, the big thing was that I really wanted to complete my qualification in record time. My mother was funding my fees, so I always knew I was there for a purpose. And as much as it's very important, I think, to have a very clear focus on what you're doing, the other element is also to make sure that you also have a balanced varsity experience. I think the core aim of why you're there is to get your qualification, but also to make sure that you try and develop the other skills. You mentioned social capital. The other important thing is that I don't think I would have survived varsity if it wasn't for the friends and for, I think, the people that I met there. And those people have become people that have not only supported my career, but have mentored my career. I could talk to a lot of career changes I've made and things that have really changed some of my careers. And some of those opportunities came purely from relationships that I'd made with people that were in the same class with me, people that were a few years ahead of me, and it's relationships that would have started from you just struggling with a tutorial question and going to ask someone, can you help me with this? And then those people take an interest in you and your development and your career. And it's something that for me, because I recognize, the input and the value and the investment that some people have put into me, that I'm also very open to sharing some of the experiences and, and giving up some of my time to help other people, I think, develop and grow. But I think for me, it is definitely a culture shock. I think varsity is the one place that does test, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you here? What you're doing? And where do you want to go with your life? And it's very important to be very clear about your purpose, your background, where you're coming from, and what you want to achieve, because it's really all about you. And I think it's probably the first intro into what a career is about, because you drive your career. And I think varsity is probably the first test of it. But I think in terms of also testing myself, in terms of, how I could push myself, because when you enter university, especially when you do courses like actual science, I remember during my orientation week, and I was trying to tell people that I was doing actual science, people would just shake their heads and say, you must be a sucker for punishment. But it's very good to have people around you that support you, and to find people in your class that, have the same desires and interests as you. And I think that's what really got me through my course. So that's what I wanted to achieve. And I was fortunate enough towards the last 2 or 3 years of my varsity journey to actually get a bursary. And I think that also inspired me to also continue to do well, because I was actually seeing the benefits of the effort that I'd put in. But again, I think it's great. I think the key is to find that healthy balance between academic achievement and also trying to grow your interpersonal skills, and also building great networks. And that's really the great, if I had to advise anyone what they should get out of us, those would probably be the three things that I would push for. But make sure you have a bit of fun as well. That's important.
Yeah, great. Great. So, with most professional designations, the format of obtaining the qualification or the designation is you go to university, perhaps for an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree, and then post-university, you write qualifying exams. So that's generally the case for, I would say, most professional qualifications. But with actuarial science, it's a bit different. In some instances, depending on the institution where you're studying towards your degree, you can actually write your professional qualifications or your professional exams during the degree. Tell us a bit more about that and how that works.
So to qualify as an actuary, you need to write 15 professional exams, and you have the choice of writing these exams. You don't actually even have to go to varsity to write them. All you really need to qualify is a first year mathematics, varsity mathematics course and a statistics course. Then you could actually write the exams on your own. But doing it through a university and doing it through a degree actually allows you to write about 12 of the 15 exams. So if you do the degree and you achieve what they call an exemption mark, or a mark that basically exempts you from having to write that professional exam, you can complete about 12 of them. The remaining exams you then have to complete during your working years, where you basically have to write exams. You have the opportunity to write exams twice a year, and you have to find the balance between, a 9-to-5 job and also then taking time off to actually study and prepare. So if I had to advise anyone is, try, if you're going the varsity route, try and get as many of the professional exams as you want, and so that you limit the amount of time that you have to study and work, and that you can also even focus more on growing your career, or taking on other courses that interest you, and other courses that you could actually do to actually grow your career. So it is quite unique in that. And I think it's also because of the number of exams that you have to write that you can actually do them through your varsity career.
Right. Yeah. So really, a hybrid of sorts where you can study and, for a degree and the professional designation and obtain them, concurrently, which I think is great for secondary school learners, learners in university that may not necessarily have the support from home, financially, to be able to carry them through those professional exams post work, because once you work, like you say, it becomes a challenge, to balance studying and working. You really have to think about some of the trade-offs of coming from a working class home. Do you work and focus on making sure that your family is okay and everyone is taken care of, or do you push the professional exams? So I think just a note for all of our secondary school learners and our learners in university, that the nice thing about the way to qualify as an actuary is that you can actually do the two concurrently. Thank you very much, Maria. I see you've been putting up all the links for the different universities. So please just click on the link, save them, have a squiz and look at all of the different universities that offer the actuarial science qualification and where you can study. And remember to visit Levels app for a more comprehensive view of the different degrees that we've put up there. So Gcina, post the fact, now you're working, you've gotten your degree and you've qualified for passed some of your professional exams. What happened next? You started your career, went right into an actuarial analyst role. And I will tell you, to all the people listening, that they're probably some of the most well-paid trainees. Yes, some of the well-paid, trainees and graduates, and the graduate program is quite lucrative, comparatively speaking. Tell us about what those early years were like, and some of the shining moments and some of the stuff that sticks out from that time.
Sure. Look, I must say you shouldn't really do a career based on the financial return. But look, it does offer, I think, a great opportunity in terms of getting into financial services and working in a variety of different areas. I've been very fortunate in my career to have been able to work in traditional sort of insurance companies, pension fund consulting businesses. I've been involved in strategy, and now I've moved into finance. And I think that's probably one of the big, one of the most important, I think, value that comes from doing finance. It allows you to do quite a lot within financial services. But to go back to when I started my career, I think when you come out of varsity, you come out with all these technical and very fancy theories that you've learned. And I think probably the biggest shift or change that you make when you come into a professional environment is just the ability to take all these concepts and all your learnings and actually turn them into helping businesses achieve and solve business problems and achieve their financial, the goals of the organization. I remember my very first years when I was just fresh out of varsity, every single calculation or report, either I had to work, and I used to just want to make sure I got the number as accurate as possible, and that was really my goal there. And then yes, I think it does grow you in terms of understanding and making sure that you're always getting to what is probably the most accurate answer. But what you learn very quickly in a business environment is that the problems you solve and the situations you face move so quickly that you have to find an ability to get to a 90% answer, and also focus on the ability to translate the solution and the idea you have to people, so people can actually take what you come up with and actually use it. And that's why I stress, very much the importance of growing the interpersonal skills, because, as an actuary, you come out with you have a lot of what you do is quite, the concepts and that we apply from a mathematical, economics, and financial theory point of view, aren't always very easily understood in the business world. But so you have to have the ability of trying to translate those things to help businesses solve the different problems they have. So I think for me, that was probably the biggest learning curve, was just to learn how to take all the great ideas and technical understanding and all these theories that you have and apply them to business problems, but also find a way in which you can then go to clients and assist them or help businesses assist them and communicate those ideas. That was really, I think, the beginning of my career. I think the biggest learning point was that. And, juggling also, I think when you come out, you also have to write your professional exams. So juggling the time that you spend in the office and also the time that you need to spend outside of that studying, and the discipline that it takes to have a professional career while at the same time having to study for your exams. A lot of companies that employ actuaries actually do give what they call study leave and give you the time to study. But how you take that and how you apply yourself is also completely up to you. And if you are in a company that really employs actuaries, it's very important that you also pass your exams, because your promotions and also your salary increases are actually quite linked to the number of exams that you passed. So it is something that you also have to take seriously. And I think probably the biggest change is balancing the two, wanting to do well in your career and your job, but realizing the fact that you also have to pass your exams and eventually qualify as an actuary. And that was really, I think, the growth that was probably the first part of my career. And then as I became more experienced, I think the next level was then now how to manage and how to also lead people. That was probably the next, I think, element of my career, because now you've got all this great technical knowledge, you understand how to translate your ideas into actionable business plans and make success of things, but you've got to learn the ability also to lead, manage, and look after people, and also learn how to influence a business, and also more strategic thinking and sort of planning that comes into your job. And that for me was, I think, the next phase of my career, where I then started taking on roles where I was managing and leading teams, and also having to apply, not, being more strategic in how I work, because I was no longer doing the detailed work that, I did it at the very start of my career. And that in itself is a developmental time, because leadership is something that I think it's a lifelong journey. You're always learning as a leader, always growing as a leader. And it's something that is probably was the next big phase of my career, which is also why I think post qualifying I started doing a lot of courses at business school to grow that element, the leadership element, the ability to influence, and the ability to think strategically as well. But my career is also marked by the fact that I've done quite a lot of different things. My personality is that I'm very curious about the world. Once I've mastered something, I always want to try something new. And that's why I've done quite a variety of things in my career. And the great thing about actual science is that it allows you to the opportunity to work in a variety of fields in financial services. And I think my career is testament to that. You're not really bogged down into any speciality, as long as you're able to push yourself and apply yourself. And also I've been very fortunate to have people that have backed me to do a variety of different things, even if I didn't necessarily always have the experience for it. And and having the right mentors and people back you as well has also been very critical to my own career and growth.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a question from Courage. He would like, obviously we know that about 70 to 80% of CFOs of JSE listed companies are chartered accountants. So, you know, to have an actuary CFO is quite an anomaly, but I won't steal Courage's thunder or, you know, his spotlight and his moment. Courage, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead and ask your question, Gcina. Courage.
Courage.
Shame. Courage says he's using a laptop that doesn't have a video. Courage? Courage? Hello, Courage? Okay, we'll just let you go ahead and answer. So Courage's question is in the chat. He says, as a CFO, do you need to have an accounting degree accompanying your actuarial science degree?
No, look, the fact is that most CFOs in industry are traditionally accountants. I think what is fortunate for me is that being an actuary and someone who's also had being an equity analyst experience has allowed me the opportunity to actually take on a CFO role. The reason for this is that, you know, the manner in which insurance companies, which is in the area that I work, the largest portion of the business that I work with is an insurance business, and insurers effectively, the way in which they're accounted for and the way that they're run, is actually the way that it's accounted for is actually more an actuarial based than a pure accounting based theory. So I think for me, the ability I've moved in is because a lot of insurers today are moving towards having actuaries as their CFOs because of the unique understanding that actuaries have of the drivers of the performance of those businesses. So I think traditionally for a normal CFO role, you need to have a sort of chartered accounting sort of background. But I was able to move into that role purely because insurance businesses generally, you know, they are actuaries actually lead a lot of the work that goes into driving the financial performance of an insurance business, which is why it was natural for an actuary to actually be, you know, become a CFO of that business. And I mean, Bojan, you would probably know this, a lot of the way that the accounting standards are going in terms of insurers, are actually going towards to accounting the way that you know, actuaries understand and interpret the performance of those companies. So it's becoming more and more easier for actuaries to become CFOs of insurance businesses. And that's where I think the opportunity came for me.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, obviously, you know, having achieved what you've achieved, having walked that long road, having, you know, traversed and, you know, reach, the heights of business and success. There are a lot of perceptions about people who are successful around whether or not they have failed, and we have a question coming through from Zoe about that. So Zoe, please go ahead and just ask your question to Gcina. So go ahead. Just unmute. Otherwise it gets chaotic.
Okay. Hello. Can anyone hear me? Hello. What was your greatest failure that actually redirected you to where you are today?
Okay.
Lovely.
Sure. Like I don't like to dwell on failures or use the phrase failure. I'm very big on describing things as learnings. But I think for me, I could probably mention a few that I think were pivotal in terms of what took me on my journey. So if I go back in my high school years, I think struggling with mathematics in my grade 11 year, pushing me then to work harder and then developing a love for it, I think opened the doors towards doing actual science. I think when I got into my early varsity careers, a story I always share with people is that when I started my first block at university, I was actually, after about the first test that you write in the first block, I was actually failing 3 out of the 5 courses I was doing at the time. And I was just like, it was just like this big shock, in terms of, you came into varsity, you actually are applying yourself, but, you're not actually doing as well as you want to do. And the questions, and how do you respond to that? And there was a point where I had to really ask myself, is this the right course for me? It's a course, is this the right direction that I'm taking, that I'm actually trying to study, but the results aren't coming. And I think the value of having like people around you who support you and challenge you was, I think, what helped. A few of the guys in the class, in my class at the time, really encouraged me to continue going. And I also had like a lot of support from my family, especially my mother and sisters, who just encouraged me to say, you know what, you've already started this journey. You've got to give it your best and see, and we'll take the outcome as it is. So I think for me, that was probably one of the bigger failures in terms of, it was not, I don't say it was a failure, it was just in terms of learning, in terms of asking myself the question, how badly do I want to achieve what I want to achieve? Because that first block was just like a bit of a shock for me, because, I was actually applying myself and I wasn't seeing the benefit of it. And then to take a step back and just to challenge myself to figure out, is the way that I'm applying myself, studying, and my approach to study is the best way? And fortunately enough, for the rest of the year, I think I managed to find a manner of working and a study habit and an approach to my studies that helped to actually see me through the rest of the year. But it was also helped by talking to a lot of people who had, been through the course and had been through to advise me to go through that. I'll be very honest. In terms of my career journey, in terms of qualifying, I wasn't one of those people that qualified in record time. Of the 15 exams, I think when I left WITS, I'd only passed 3 of them. So it took me probably another between 8 and 10 years to complete the rest of the exams that I needed. And then the simple truth is that I probably failed more professional exams than I passed. And it would have been very easy for me to have actually, told myself that this was it. But I think personally, I'm very driven to be a person who starts things and finishes things. So I really pushed myself to ensure that no matter how difficult it was, I'm going to achieve this. And what I kept seeing from all of those challenges is that if I'm applying myself and pushing myself and driving myself, the results will come. You just have to trust your process and trust yourself and trust your ability. That even if you do have, the odd disappointment, that you must keep going. And keep motivating yourself and take stock and take courage from the things that you are achieving and things that you are getting right. So I think it's built for me personally a lot of resilience in terms of my career and fortitude. And it's also allowed me to not mind taking on new challenges. As I've said, I've worked in 3 different industries and walked into some of them with actually very little experience. But the fact that I've always backed the fact that if I push myself and apply myself, that even when I do hit disappointments or what people would call failures, I keep at it and I will eventually be successful. And that, for me, is probably, I think, you can learn a lot and grow a lot from the things that actually don't work out the way that you expect them to.
Okay. So, definitely it's very key and important to surround yourself with cheerleaders, people that will encourage you and help you keep you going, during those really tough and trying times, and to remind you of why and where you started. I think a lot of the time we can get so caught up in the detail and, really be in the dark and in the woods, trying to get to the goal, and we sort of forget why we started. We forget how far we've come, and some really inspiring words there from Gcina just about that. So I'd just like to also just ask a question about just leadership and continuous learning. Just with a focus on continuous learning. You spoke a lot about the different courses that you've taken. Some you actually passed with distinction at business school. What's the importance of continuous learning? Once a person reaches what other people may perceive to be the pinnacle of their career, they think that's where the learning stops. And in many ways, perhaps that's where the learning begins. Perhaps talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, so if I touch on leadership, I think leadership is a lifelong journey, because I think the best leaders are the leaders that are most true to themselves and authentic. So I think you will always be growing and learning as a leader. So that's what I've learned. I've always seen leadership as a privilege. You're given a responsibility to not only ensure that people are going in the right direction and doing the right things, but you also have the personal responsibility to those people to ensure that they're growing and learning and achieving their goals and responsibilities. So I think it's something that, as I said, it's a privilege and a responsibility, and something that take very seriously. I think sometimes people get very attracted to the titles and the privileges that come with it. But what I've learned is that probably the most encouraging or inspiring thing is just seeing people grow and develop under your leadership and your guidance, and seeing them and seeing the organization achieve its goals. So because it's based on you as a person and your personal journey, because you can't, I don't think you can, I think people can always pick up if you're not being authentic or being yourself, and people struggle to follow people that they don't feel are genuine on themselves. So leadership will always be about being true to yourself and understanding yourself, which is a lifelong journey. So you must always create opportunities to test your leadership, test how you lead, and see how you respond to different situations. You can never stop learning about people, and you also have the opportunity of leading different types of people, and also different and taking those people through different types of challenges, which will, I think, grow your ability as a leader as well. But in terms of business, I mean, the way that we are now and the way that things change so quickly, as a professional, continuous learning is almost it's just something that you have to be doing. And because the world changes so quickly that by the time you even understood a concept today, there's already a new concept. So it's very important for you, if you want to grow and be successful, to never be complacent, to always be learning and creating an edge for yourself in your career. So once I'd completed my actuarial exams and I'd completed that part of my academic learning, I then took on sort of executive type courses at business school to test and grow in terms of leadership, the ability to influence, and also to help with the strategic thinking that is needed in business, because that's where I see my career, for example, going. It's more of a business leader and more of a strategic orientated role, which is why my current focus now is doing a master's in strategy, because that, I believe, is the next phase of my career. And you have to be doing that. And but even outside of the business, because I think just as a professional, you always have to be, keep yourself updated in terms of what is the the latest and most important thought generation or thought leadership in the field that you're in, to keep yourself relevant. And I think also to ensure that in your business you're ensuring that the thing that you're doing are going to be essential to sustaining your business into the future. And so for me, I think both leadership and both your professional development are lifelong. You never really reach the top, and you should always be comfortable with continuously learning and growing and adding, more advantages and more new capabilities and abilities in yourself, and keep testing yourself for the rest of your career, because the world changes so quickly. I think, for example, now we're dealing with this pandemic, which requires a very different leadership style to when, South Africa was growing or prospering or early in our democracy. And the ability, I think, to shift between the leadership styles that are needed is also in itself a lifelong learning experience.
Okay, we have a question from Lindy, just with regards to the professional exams and the different roles that you assumed in your early career. Lindy, go ahead and ask Gcina your question.
Hi, Gcina. I just wanted to, how was your experience as an equity researcher different from the normal actuarial analyst position? Because most of us as actuarial students, we're not advised to go into the finance route from like the get-go. And also, do these firms actually pay for your actuarial exams? Thank you.
Sorry, Lindy, just tell us where you're studying, which university, and yes, just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lindy. I'm from UCT. This is my final year in actuarial science. Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
I think that's a great question. I think the key difference of being an equity analyst. So if I summarize what an equity analyst does, an equity analyst looks at companies and tries to use what they call like fundamental investment theory to try and figure out what are these companies actually worth. And once you've worked out what a company is actually worth, you compare this to the share price. And if what you think the company is worth is more than what the share price is, then you can then buy the company, because you believe that over time, the share price of the company will end up being close to the value that you estimate it to be. And then that drives the investment decisions of an investment house. It's not a traditional, I think you as part of your actual profession, some of the exams that you write are investment related. And a lot of the tools that are needed in order to do a lot of the equity analyst work, you already have them through your actual qualification. The key that you learn when you go into an investment type role is just how to think about companies, how to research companies, and how to use how to use those things to value a company. So, like a simple concept, for example, you'll understand, since you're studying actuarial science, that one of the things they keep teaching is how to do a present value of cash flows. The valuation of a listed company is just the present value of the profits that you expect it to make in the future. So already in your training, you've already learned a lot of the technical tools that are used in an equity analyst type role. The key is just to learn around, how to apply the investment theory to valuing, and the research you need to do on a particular company to valuing that company. I think a lot of your lecturers and professors would obviously advise you not to go into that environment, because in those environments, it's more important how you think and how you apply yourself more than what your background is. So a lot of companies that employ investment analysts are more interested in the way in which you apply yourself and the way in which you think. And it doesn't matter what your background is. Yes, doing a qualification like actuarial science, even being a chartered accountant, gives you an edge, because your ability to look at financials of a company and understand a lot of the the mathematical or quantitative techniques that are used comes quite easy to you. But those environments, because they don't have an emphasis on those, will differ in whether they would pay for your actual studies. A lot of them would support qualifications like CFA, which is a Chartered Financial Analyst role, which is why if your eventual goal is to qualify as an actuary, a lot of people advise you to start in an insurance company where they would give you the time off and also support your studies and also increase your salary on the basis of you passing your studies, where in traditional in roles such as, an equity analyst in an investment house, the focus is just on the quality of the work that you do and how you apply yourself, and not so much on whether you've got 10 or 12 actual exams. So, but my advice is always to be not to also, mustn't derail. I think if that is an industry that you're interested in, I think it's something that you can still pursue, but you have to make a decision around, do you want to qualify first and then go into it? Or is it something that you are happy to do both? I mean, my experience is that when I actually joined and I was working as an equity analyst, I was at the tail end of my completing of my actual exams. I was actually writing, I think, the last 2 or 3 while I was actually an equity analyst. And I think if it had not been for the discipline that I'd had from my earlier years of working in an actuarial traditional actuarial role, it would have been difficult. But definitely, I think it's, to answer your question, those areas don't traditionally support that, but there are a lot of great opportunities for actuaries to go into those areas just because of the qualification and the learnings and the knowledge that you possess.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And then, we're just about done. Sorry for so everyone whose question we may not necessarily get to. Entrepreneurship, huge topic in South Africa. The driver of economic growth, particularly your SMEs. You've had and enjoyed a stunning corporate career, but entrepreneurship remains a very important thinking point in South Africa. And, from an actuarial perspective, a lot of the companies that have been started, the life insurance companies are less than 20, 50 years old. So these are new companies. These are fairly young companies that have been started in the insurance field that have done exceptionally well. And that was started by entrepreneurs. Your Outsurance, your Discovery. We know that you're a corporate leader, but what are your thoughts and views on entrepreneurship in South Africa, particularly from the perspective of insurance and, your career as an actuary?
So I agree with you completely. I think the future of South Africa is to build entrepreneurship. I think if the economic growth that we want to achieve as a country, and to address, challenges in terms of unemployment, it can't be achieved without, creating an environment, an economy that facilitates, I think, entrepreneurship. And I think the alignment we need to have across, what we study at university and how young entrepreneurs are supported, I think where the big, difference is. So, I mean, for me, if I look at a lot of the guys that have been successful in terms of building insurance companies, you mentioned Discovery, Adrian Gore. These are all people who went through the traditional route. They studied, qualification, went into a corporate environment, worked. And I think what made them different is that they walked into these environments and took all their learnings and said, I think maybe this can be done differently and even better. And I think that's and I think if you look at Adrian Gore's story, I think the first people that he went to present his idea actually turned him down. And then it was only, I think, later on that he actually found within first round people to back his idea and his entire journey into starting Discovery started from that. So for me personally, I completely support it. I do believe that it's something that in South Africans we need to grow in young people. I think the challenge that we've grown up with this mindset, a lot of us, that we all have to go into traditional name careers. And I think we need to, I think, invest more in terms of supporting and encouraging people to go out there and try different ideas and try different ways of being supported and funded. And so for me, I think entrepreneurship is key. You don't necessarily need to go through, I think, the traditional route of just going through a corporate career and then going into it. I think we need to create a culture in South Africa where people have opportunities and have ideas. Those ideas are supported, and corporates themselves, very much like in Adrian's Gore situation, should be willing to back people's ideas and support them. And so my personal journey has been really a corporate one, but it's one that I think at some point will lead me into eventually I'll probably enable myself to do my own thing and start something that I enjoy doing. I'm very big in helping and supporting people that have started their own sort of initiatives in any way that I can. And so, as I said, I think that's the future of this country. I think we need more entrepreneurs, more ideas. And I think we also need to start creating things that are unique to our country. I think there's a lot of great entrepreneurial ideas that would be unique to solving Africa's problems. And not always allowing, I think, the business successes that are from other countries being successful in our country, rather focusing on creating entrepreneurs that are solving Africa's problems, because we've got quite a unique set of challenges in our country. And I think if we can just encourage entrepreneurs and give them support that they need, I think our country could be on a different growth trajectory.
Yeah, stunning. We have a budding entrepreneur who's in third year actuarial science who'd like to ask you a question. Kabelo, go ahead. Ask Rene your question.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi,
Hello.
So, sorry for this. I'm busy with the house call now. So, I just wanted to ask as to what are the entrepreneurial or entrepreneur opportunities, what are the opportunities for entrepreneurship in the actual space in particular? Because I don't like the working for someone type of vibes, but I'd like to be in the entrepreneurial space, but on the actual side of things. So I just want to ask, what are the current opportunities that are available? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Look, I think the biggest one for me is there's always an opportunity for people in the actual space to go into very much consulting type work. That's always, I think, so a lot of people have started actual consultancies because the work, the training that you get as an actuary allows you to apply yourself to a wide variety of solving different kinds of problems. When I look at some of the work that I've seen that when I used to work for Alexander Forbes in consulting, the different types of problems that get brought into those for actuaries to solve span across employee benefits, damage claims, structuring of investment type products, and even just quantifying. If someone has suffered loss from something, actuaries can help to quantify those things. So consulting is always a great place to go into. But I think, as an actuary, I think when I look at entrepreneurship, it's all about the ability to come up with a business idea and implement it. And your training as an actuary can I think give you a certain way of thinking that allows you to approach business problems in a certain way. And I think that's more what you should really focus on. I think you could start an insurance company very easily from short training because you understand the drivers of it. But at the same time, you could also as I said, consult on how to structure or how to quantify different risks and help companies, especially in terms of risk management, because a lot of what actuaries do is based in terms of risk management. So there's a lot of opportunities in that. But I just, for my personal experience, because I've worked in so many different industries, it really is just about the way that you think and how you take all your learnings from the career that you've chosen and apply it to whatever it is, whatever business, whatever type of business that you're interested in. And that's really the focus. I would want to believe that, you know, your learnings from your professional studies and your studies give you, I think, some sort of an edge that you can then apply to whatever it is that you want to do in terms of that. But there's, I think, a lot of opportunities naturally just coming out of your actuarial studies as well.
Okay. Okay, just another question coming through from Courage. Are the roles of an actuary in the bank the same in the insurance field? So is there a difference from an employability and employment perspective in terms of the different roles and jobs that one could get into and pursue?
Yeah, there's a difference. So we just think simplistically, and an insurer's main aim is to, you know, pay a claim once something has happened, because you pay them a premium for that. So actually, is a key to that is how does the insurance company determine how much it must charge you for an event that it doesn't know when it's going to happen, and when it happens, sometimes it doesn't know what the actual cost would be. So their role there is, I think that's why I think actuaries are quite key in terms of the performance of for example, an insurance company. And they play a number of roles in that. So as an actuary within an insurance company, you can be involved in product development, because you need to understand, you know, how the concept of insurance and how to build products that don't bring undue risk onto the insurance business. You can then be involved in the pricing of those contracts. And then you can also be involved in the evaluation of how they perform, and also do work in terms of ensuring that, you know, that the expected profitability from those products is actually what's coming out. And then there's also a very big, what they call asset liability management, where an insurer now needs to take the premiums that it reserves and then that it receives from its clients and invest these such that it has, you know, still sufficient money to pay this in the future. So there's a big investment in asset liability managing role that actuaries play in insurers. In a bank, traditionally, actuaries play quite a big role in credit risk, because credit risk is how a bank assesses whether, if I borrow money from the bank, will I be able to pay it? And a lot of quantitative techniques come into that. So a lot of actuaries that go into traditional banks play that type of role. In investment banking, actuaries can also find roles in structuring of products, such as derivatives, for example, because a lot of quantitative techniques are also used in that as well. So the roles are a little bit different between what you traditionally do in a bank and what you do in an insurer, but the training allows you to, I think, to comfortable in both areas.
Yeah, okay, great. And then just lastly, the fourth industrial revolution on everyone's lips. We are right in the middle of it, and the COVID pandemic has forced us to really adapt to the changing times. This meeting is something that would have happened ordinarily at a school. And now here we are with our laptops and, you know, really adapting to the changing times. We've seen a couple of really interesting insurance tech products coming through, companies like Pineapple. You know, a majority of our audience and our learners and students who are part of the Levels Up community are still in school and in university. They still have an opportunity for them to, for themselves to prepare themselves for skills of the future, to take an extra module here and there in anticipation and preparation for what, you know, the job market seeks, you know, particularly from an insurance perspective. What would your advice be for skills of the future, careers of the future, companies of the future from an insurance perspective?
Yeah, so you don't embrace the digital revolution. I think you are just setting yourself up to be a dinosaur and to become extinct. I think what it does for a lot of industries is that it just changes the dynamic in terms of what types of products you can offer to people, how people can use those products. And if you're not connected to that, then I think you'll really struggle. I think most other companies will struggle to be successful in the future, because what 4IR is doing is that it's creating capabilities that are also changing customer behavior. So before, most of us would be happy to maybe walk into a bank and engage, with someone to deal with something. But the way the world is going now, a lot of those things are being done without you leaving your home or from your phone and engaging that way. And that element of us engaging digitally and having to embrace that, I think, creates opportunities. It enhances the pace at which companies can change. And also, I think for me, means that if you're in your studies, you need to be quite aware of this changing dynamic in the world, because it also influences the type of jobs and roles that we'll have in the future. I mean, if you look at 4IR, a lot of people are asking, what your traditional ways of viewing a lot of careers could fundamentally change because of the capability that come from 4IR and AI. And I think for young people that are studying, it's very important to keep close to those things, because your choice of study, you need to choose it carefully to allow for the fact that some careers could be fundamentally different in the future. For example, if you take accounting for an example, a question in the future could come up is to, do you really need people to do the normal accounting and journaling that you would normally find in an accounting, when a lot of that probably can be automated and probably done with less errors through a machine, which means that the accounting role or the accounting job is probably going to stop being one that is more like administrative, or one that where you need to actually do a lot of the manual or repetitive work, to becoming a more high order thinking, value creation, adding more value into businesses than it was before. Certain types of jobs, like having the ability to code, or having the ability to might become fundamental to a lot of careers. And I think personally, for me, anyone who's coming up needs to really expose themselves to, I think, the world, of technology, computing, and what impact that will have on your career, and keep asking the questions and seeking the information to understand that the career path that you want to take, what is the big changes and impacts that are coming to it. I think 4R is challenging, I think, everything, and we're seeing it especially in terms of in the financial services industry, where, as you heard, you're getting so many different types of companies that are offering solutions that your big companies are not well set up to offer. But I always see those things as creating both opportunity and challenge. And it creates unique challenges for us to learn how to adapt to those things, which is why you have to always be learning and always adapting to what's happening. But from a career perspective and choosing what you do at school and whatever, I would be very making sure that you expose yourself to where every career is going and the impact that it has on every career, because 4R is going to change, I think, everything, and it's going to become a part of a lot of how we do business and how our careers are going to be mapped. For example, my nephew is in a school where he's already learning how to code. And that's just a basic thing. And I'm just saying, the way that the world is changing today, is that the impact in 4R on our careers and where we're going is going to be fundamental. And I think for your growth and you have to keep close to what is going on in those areas, so that it makes it easier for you when you need to make decisions around what career path you're going to take.
Stunning. And just lastly, looking into the future, what are you most excited about from as a leader in insurance, in financial services, about South Africa, about our youth, and about our future prospects and their future prospects. Just a parting shot.
Personally, I'm very excited. I think we're in a place where, and to touch on the digital revolution, I think we're in a place where we're going through a shift that's going to, fundamentally change business dynamics. But I think it's an exciting future. I think it's going to create new careers. It's going to create a different way in which financial services organizations work. And I think looking at Africa and the fact that we're on a sort of a developmental agenda, I think we should be one of the countries that are really embracing the digital, because we don't have, I think, the legacy of some of the other bigger nations. We could actually really just, instead of trying to replicate what other countries have done, just, go with the 4R and digital revolution to try, and fast track the growth of Africa and that development. What excites me is that from an African perspective is just the fact that we're as a country as well, our ability to believe and invest in our own homegrown ideas is growing. And that really inspires me. The fact that we're creating our own solutions and creating our own ideas in terms of addressing our own challenges, and not always looking to the world and trying to replicate that. And seeing younger entrepreneurs and seeing younger people coming into the industry and challenging us, I think is an exciting space to be. I really something that I'm quite interested in is just how, venture capital and seed capital funding in South Africa for homegrown, ideas can really grow and elevate in South Africa. And I'm really, really inspired by that. I think a number of people that I know that are starting different organizations and supporting themselves and trying different things is really encouraging for me. And I think as a country, we've got lots of opportunity, lots of, I think, ability and capability, despite all the challenges that we have. And I think focusing on the good and enhancing and growing on that, I think is really what's going to take us forward. So I'm really inspired, really encouraged. So much to learn, so much to understand, so much to do, and so much to try. And also encouraged to see about the development of that and the knowledge base that I think young people have. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't have the opportunity to Google certain careers. You had to get a book to read up on certain things, and but the amount of information that's there and the empowerment that young people have in terms of and the confidence they have to try out things and back themselves in certain things, I think is inspiring for me. I'm very hopeful for where our country is going, despite all the current environment and the current circumstance we find ourselves in. I think we should also see it as an opportunity to reset and take a long, hard look at how we can really drive the future, because the world is changing, and I think Africa can play a big role in it. We have a young population, and I don't think we've gotten the full benefits and potential out of it. And I think that excites me as a person, that we need to harness that the rest of the world doesn't have. Africa needs to continue to harness that and get the best out of it.
Awesome, stunning, really stunning parting words. So it really starts with you. The opportunities are there. Things have never been easier from an information perspective. Access to economic opportunities that are enabled by information. The time has never been easier than it is now. Young business leaders, like they're now saying, that it starts with you. You can do a myriad of things. There are so many opportunities out there. It's really just, it's as much as what you can imagine, and we at Levels Up endorse that thinking, and we encourage you to develop yourselves and, to acquire skill, use the app, use the software, follow us on social media, and really just, tell a story about yourself that one day we can share with others. Thank you all very much for joining.